Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Snide, Marketing Director for Revolution Group, and I'll be your host for our discussion today on how you can beat your competition in 2018 with Cloud ERP. A few housekeeping items before we start the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website at www.revolutiongroup.com. I will email you a link to the recording in the next few days. We have allotted an hour for the webinar, but we should only run about 30 minutes, and at the end we will be answering questions. So please feel free to submit your questions into the section labeled questions at any time. For those of you who don't know us, Revolution Group is a Central Ohio-based technology solutions provider founded in 1995. Our mission is to help our customers leverage technology to improve their businesses. We have been deploying ERP and CRM systems for manufacturing companies for over 15 years. We do system selections, full service implementations of NetSuite, Plex Manufacturing Cloud, and Salesforce. We also offer managed IT services in which our staff manages your entire infrastructure. Our speaker today is Chris Blackwell, one of our senior manufacturing consultants here at Revolution Group. He has years of comprehensive practical manufacturing production, planning, supply chain, procurement, and system deployment experience. With that, I'll let Chris take it away.
All right, thanks, Cindy. I appreciate that introduction. As Cindy said, Revolution Group has been in business for a little over 20 years, and I am part of the manufacturing consulting group. And I just want to give a little bit of background on our group and really where we specialize. As you can see on the slide here, we are heavily automotive, and we have a lot of expertise and background in the automotive sector. But we also have some experience with process manufacturing, aerospace, and defense. So I really want to set the tone that we are not so much a technology group, but we're a manufacturing consultancy, and we specialize in ERP. So what I want to talk today about is Cloud ERP, small and medium-sized businesses, and why I think it's important that we think about and consider making that transition if you haven't done so. So manufacturing is evolving. I want to talk about what some of that evolution looks like and what is driving that. But it used to be when manufacturers were faced with steady and predictable demand, steady and sometimes long lead times, supply chains were more localized, and we operated in a kind of a paradigm of periodic reporting where we would report monthly, weekly sometimes, based on a lot of manual and batch-driven processes. Today, manufacturers are faced with a totally different set of conditions. Variable and unpredictable demand. As we all know in manufacturing, lead times have shortened up and consumer demand is no longer predictable. So we have to be able to adjust and be proactive. We're also working in a time now where our supply chains are no longer just local, but we are working globally. So the ability to communicate with our suppliers and to manage our supply base is extremely important and one of the biggest drivers today of success of manufacturers. Product life cycles are shortened. Consumers are more finicky than they ever were, or more demanding should be a better word, and they want what they want. And we as manufacturers have to have that ability to respond to those changing requirements and that changing demand. And lastly, the need for real-time data, reporting, analytics is extremely important today. So what are some of the trends that we're seeing to address that evolution that we're experiencing in manufacturing? One of the big things, and what we're going to talk today about, and the need for, is this cloud computing. What is that? You know, what does that mean? Another trend is mobility. I mean, we all have cell phones or iPhones or Android, and we all are connected much more than we ever have been, and that is only going to increase as the technology evolves. We can not only reach each other at a moment's notice, but we can integrate and interact with our machines and our plants and things like that without having necessarily to be on site anymore. So that's one of those trends that is really driving this. And then the ability, the analytics, the ability to not only gather data, which a lot of manufacturers do, but that ability then to do something with that data, the ability to process it, to analyze it, and then to make informed decisions using that data. That only improves in that, what we call that real-time decision making. So what I want to talk a little bit about is this evolution and this transition to cloud computing and kind of what it means. So this slide here is a representation of the spending by manufacturing over the last 15 or so years on technology. And if you look at 1999, we all knew what happened then when manufacturers and everybody was up in arms about the Y2K thing, right? So everybody was spending money and trying to make sure that their systems functioned come January 1st, 2000. But after that, you can see a market dip in technology spending by manufacturers all the way through 2009. Now, obviously, some of that had to do with the economy there in 2008, 9, 10. But at that point from 2009 on, we can see that the spending by manufacturers on technology has increased. Right? Now, there's some interesting data, though, that is behind this slide here. You know, if you look at and you talk about manufacturing, you hear that, you know, jobs are leaving and things like that. Well, they are, and they've been replaced by robots and automation and things like that. So if you look at any of the data, it shows that manufacturing is very, very productive and that productivity has increased. Well, that's a little misleading because the productivity increases that we see in manufacturing are really attributed to a couple key industries, and those are the computer industries and some of the other high-tech industries. What we really found is that our run-of-the-mill manufacturers are really less productive today than they ever have been, right? And part of the addressing, I guess, of that lack of productivity increase is this transition now to and the adoption of technology. So this slide is really is a good slide to get us to level set where we are today and where we're going. The other thing to understand is that the estimated spend on cloud services and is expected to exceed $200 billion by 2020, and that's just in the manufacturing sector. So we know that manufacturers are out there understanding that this shift is taking place and that they are spending money. So the question is, if you're not, as a small or medium-sized business, if you're not making this transition and making the investment in this technology shift, you know, are you being left behind? Are you doing yourself some injustice by not doing that? This is a chart and a graph that we use when we talk about ERP with our clients and our prospects. You know, we use this chart to kind of level set where we are and what it kind of means to to make that continuous improvement journey along this continuum to fully optimize, which no one ever is. Obviously, we all understand in manufacturing that this is a journey, and that this journey to continuous improvement is ongoing. But what we find is that most small to medium-sized businesses fall somewhere in this area, right? We're anywhere between disparate systems, some basic integration, and some intermediate process integration. We understand that a lot of manufacturers are using, Excel, Word, Access, QuickBooks, all kinds of disparate, separate systems to accomplish the tasks of today's business. The problem is a lot of them aren't integrated with each other. They don't talk to one another, and then it's difficult to find what we've termed as that single version of truth, right? Where can I go to get the data that I know is accurate and I can count on to make some decisions? In most manufacturing facilities, I've got an Excel spreadsheet on my desktop, somebody else has one, and we have to get together and discuss, the findings or the data that's in them, and somehow come to some kind of agreement on which one is really correct. So this is where we find a lot of the organizations, and I think the question is, where do you find yourself if you were to have this discussion and look at these points? Where do you find yourself, and what does that mean? And so, if you're not making that investment in technology and in your processes and process improvements, are you staying competitive? So with that, and obviously being an ERP and manufacturing consultancy, we think about Cloud ERP. So what is that? And it's out there. You've all watched the commercials about the cloud and people sending up their belongings with balloons attached, and it's this nebulous thing that is out there, but we don't know what it really is. But really, it's just a server that lives in somebody's data center that they manage, and our data is housed on it. But the ERP section of it, or piece of it, is it's a scalable software application accessed via the internet that integrates and manages business processes from the shop floor to the top floor. That's Cloud ERP, basic definition. Keys are it's scalable and it integrates. Scalable means it can it flexes and it can grow, and integrated means it talks to the different functions are integrated. They talk to one another, and that therefore you have that single version of truth that I mentioned earlier. So what are some of the benefits of your adoption of a Cloud ERP system? As a small and medium-sized business, access and flexibility is going to be key, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a second. It can drive operational efficiency. Again, that visibility to real-time data, that one single version of the truth, is important. Improved communications with not only internally, but with your partner and supplier ecosystems will be improved. And then the security and the reliability is a benefit as well. So let's talk about each one of them a little more in detail. Access and flexibility. So it used to be where the larger companies and ERP was what exclusionary. It was expensive, it was cumbersome, it was highly customized, it required IT resources to maintain. There were maintenance fees, there were versions and revisions that you had to always upgrade to, and things like that. And based on your level of customization, that could have been problematic. The key to, I guess, one of the benefits to this cloud-based ERP system is that it now gives small to medium-sized businesses that entree to that large ERP system functionality at much lower costs. So No longer am I buying a bunch of hardware. I don't need to maintain the hardware. I don't need to have huge IT expenses and resources on hand. So I can now get into the game and have access to some of the same functionality that the big guys have, and it fits my budget. It's also available 24/7, and there's a caveat there. Obviously, it's available based on your access to the internet. It's scalable, it's able to expand and contract based on business conditions. So if you're going to grow, then you add more. You can have more users get into your system, and most ERP systems have the ability to scale and add storage and data retention as you grow. Driving operational efficiency. So an integrated cloud-based ERP system should eliminate manual processes and errors. We hear it all the time when we talk to our customers and our clients. We go in and we batch things, and we've always got to go back and clean things up. And if somebody makes an error, sometimes it's hard to track that down and find out when that error happened and who did it and things like that. But with today's ERP systems, that doesn't happen, right? So we can eliminate that manual process and any errors that are associated with it. Another big benefit there is improved inventory accuracy and traceability, right? You have the ability now to serialize inventory potentially and track that through your production process and perform tracebacks to talk about and address warranty concerns or recalls and things like that. So those processes that used to take days and hours now can happen in the matter of minutes. Better production scheduling, which increases your productivity, it increases your on-time delivery, and all those things are obviously interrelated. The reduction of scrap and waste is another thing that can be a benefit of the ERP system. And this improvement in production and efficiency then could give you the ability to repurpose your human capital, right? So things that people are doing today from a manual standpoint, they can now be repurposed within the organization to do something that drives a little more value. Real-time visibility of data, again, that single source of truth. Improved data analytics, which gives you the ability to make better and more timely decisions. And then another key piece, and we hear it all the time, and this reliance on tribal knowledge. Well, so-and-so knows this process, or this person is integral. Well, with a modern cloud ERP system, the data is in the system. And so that reliance on this tribal knowledge is greatly reduced, and it eliminates what we call these knowledge vacuums in the organization. Improved communication is another key benefit. Not only are we able to communicate internally with one another from this single source of truth, but depending on the ERP application, we can allow our customers and our suppliers access to our systems to see their orders, to see inventory, to do things for us that normally we have somebody in the organization is doing. So they can take on some of that responsibility. Again, real-time information and access from a supplier standpoint, from a customer standpoint. So it improves that planning, the collaboration, that sharing of information, the details that is key to helping us stay competitive or be more competitive, be more reactive to some of our customer demands and those changing requirements. Another key benefit, and I think the last one that I have listed here, is the security and the reliability. We talk to clients all the time, and it's kind of funny. We'll go into to a client site, and they'll take us into their server closet, and they feel really good that server closet is secure, and they have this this feeling that, our data is special and we don't want to have it up in the cloud and we don't want to have people have access to it. And they have this false sense of security around their about their system security and their data security. And, it's one of those big things that we have to overcome when we talk to clients about this. So one of the things we talk about is that these big ERP applications, this is what they do, and this is where they really shine, and building that security around their systems is much better than anything that you can do individually. Being a small business manufacturer, you don't know IT like they do. You don't know security like they do. So once we overcome that, I think that's one of the things that's really a good thing for folks to understand, that they are better at this data security and system security than I ever could be. And the systems, most of these systems that we talk to in the ERP applications have these 99.8.9% uptimes. They rarely go down. Again, the caveat is your access to the internet and your internal bandwidth that you have, right? And then the last piece is that there's some today's ERP systems, there's this automated update. So we talked about, in most no longer having versions and revisions that you have to manually update your system with. These things are automatically part of your ERP system, where the updates, the maintenance and things are automatically done, and you have access to them immediately should you need them. So that was pretty quick, but the summary of this is manufacturing is changing. Technology is a huge driver of that change, and transition to the cloud is real, and it's happening, right? At some point, there will be no more on-site hosted applications. Everything is going to live in the cloud eventually. We no longer drive horses and carriage, I guess, unless you live in Amish country, which we happen to have a lot here in central Ohio, but most folks drive cars now. So it's happening, and it's real. So we talk to our clients and we impress upon them that this transition is happening, and we want to be a part of that and helping them make that successful transition. So one of the things we want to do, instead of just talking at you, not giving you something of substance to you, and based on our 15 years of ERP implementation experience, my 7 years of personal ERP implementation experience, one of the things we wanted to do for the folks of you that are listening here today is give you some takeaways, a golden nugget, if you will, of some information that will be useful as you consider this change, and if you get to that point, to transitioning to the cloud. One big thing that we see when we are doing our implementation is the data in the old systems and how we get that out and into the new ERP system. So in preparation for that change, if you want to do anything to prepare for that, is to understand your data. Understand, where it lives, what condition it is in, what data you really need, and what data you want to carry over. Okay? That'll make that transition much more efficient when you get to that point with your implementation partner. The other key is, again, we talk about this integrated nature of cloud-based integration. The other key is to get your people internally talking to one another, right? So that they understand the integrated nature of what they do today and how that is going to be positioned or configured in an ERP system, in a cloud-based ERP system. So, for example, you can have a process that you don't realize today impacts another area. So to getting these functions to talk to one another, to understand those areas of overlap and interaction and integration are key. And if you have that set up, that's going to help you better evaluate an ERP solution and be better positioned to take advantage and to be more efficient in your ERP implementation. So with that, I'll turn it over back to Cindy and answer any questions that anyone may have.
Great, thank you, Chris. We do have a few questions that came in during the presentation, and if there are any more questions, please submit them now in the questions section on the GoToWebinar. But the first question, what do you do when the internet is down?
That's a good question, and in our implementation methodology, we need to make sure that our clients have a contingency plan to continue to operate when the internet is unavailable for whatever reason. The other thing that we do as a consultancy is we walk our clients, if necessary, through a infrastructure review, right? So we want to understand early on what your infrastructure limitations are related to internet connectivity and things like that, and address those. So those two pieces, one, doing the surveys early on, right? The infrastructure survey, and then B, making sure that we have a contingency plan to be able to record production, to record data until the system is back is key. And lastly, one thing that we understand too, talking about that mobility issue, is most ERP systems can run off any browser. So I actually had a client where the electricity went down due to a major thunderstorm, and we were still able to perform shipping operations using mobile connectivity hotspots and things like that. So while the cell service was still going, we were able to take advantage of that when the internet was down. So hope that answered that question.
Yeah. A couple more questions. How long does a typical Cloud ERP implementation take?
Another good question. Implementation timeframes vary based on the scope of the project, the number of facilities or plants that are in scope. But typically, I would say a one plant implementation would take 7 to 9 months, usually. The other caveat I would say to that is what really drives the timeline for an implementation is our client's internal teams, their resource availability, right? So this is a huge process, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of time commitment. So the clients need to understand that and be able to employ their resources properly, and they need to be engaged. If we can only meet with a resource once a week, then that's going to drag it out, right? So in our implementation, we usually talk about what a client's team needs to look like, what resources need to be involved, and we talk about the time commitment of those resources.
I have one more question. If there are any other questions, please submit them now. I have concerns with data and system security. How do you address those? Right.
So as we talked, what we recommend and what we will do with our ERP partners, and I'm sure any ERP application that you're looking at will do the same thing, is we get our clients on the phone, and the best case scenario is get them up to our ERP application partners' data centers to have those conversations there. So once they see the data centers and they understand the level of security that is employed by our ERP partners, they usually feel a lot more comfortable. But that's how we want to do that. We want to have the initial conversation. We can say whatever we want, but we want to get them in front of those security professionals at our ERP partners.
Well, it looks like that is all the questions that we have for now, but if anyone on the call has further questions or would like to discuss how we can help you with your manufacturing or technology needs, please don't hesitate to contact us here at Revolution Group. Once again, thank you, Chris, for presenting, and thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a great day.